Our live feed for that. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I bet it's that's great.
How's it going?
Pretty good. Lauren did a great job. Lauren did a great job.
Yeah.
Did you come last year? So yeah, I did.
No, I did. Stephanie's a good friend.
Yeah, you too. It was
Okay, well, we're going to get started.
Oh, I don't know either. Yeah, breakfast, and then we'll break out somewhere.
I would know if I was.
Mine are a headband, basically. I never took them. Oh, it's just comes out.
Okay, thank you everyone. Welcome to the second annual Under the Influence Conference. So my name is Lauren Johnson and I'm the Prevention Coordinator here at Purchase College. I'm also the chair of our Collegiate Alliance for Student Success and Prevention. This year's theme is the power of prevention, and we are so excited for all of our fantastic speakers. And we're speaking today both on primary prevention and relapse prevention. We felt really strongly about how we wanted to present this conference, and I know I speak for the entire steering committee when I say how thankful I am for the support of the community. I would really like to take this opportunity to wholeheartedly thank each one of our sponsors and to our steering committee, Matt Krause, Robbie Morell, Vincent Walker, Pat Tomasi, Patty Warble, for all their support through this planning process. I hope you all got a chance to enjoy some of our beautiful breakfast, which was sponsored by New York Presbyterian. New York Presbyterian, as our sponsor, we're very happy to highlight them and their amazing resource in this community. Please take a couple of minutes on one of our breaks to visit their table over in the corner there if you haven't yet. A special thanks to our Office of Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Services, who sponsor our environmental prevention grant, and for all of our OASIS team members who are here today. Thank you. So we have a phenomenal lineup for you here today. Our collegiate recovery panel is what our students call stacked. We have a lot of really great representation from our CRP programs in the region, and their information is so crucial to our students' safety and well-being. When planning for this conference, the steering committee knew they wanted to get Dr. Jason Kilmer from the University of Washington to present. We've wanted to bring him here for the past couple of years, but he's just so dang popular. But we got him here this year, though. Let's see. Oh, and the first time I saw John Hamilton speak, I thought I have to plan a conference just to get this man to come and speak at my conference. He's such a wealth of knowledge, and I can't wait for you all to hear his presentation. Now, I have a story about our last presenter. Anyone who's worked with me knows that I am a huge fan of Johan Hari. Who isn't, right? So my supervisor was talking to me when we were planning this, my supervisor Matt Krause here, who's been so incredibly supportive, thank you. And he asked me, who would be your ideal presenter for this conference? And of course I said, well, Johan Hari. But you know, he is so, Johan is so sought after, and he lives in London, and you know, a man with 12 million, views on TED Talk. It was a reach, right? So with Matt's support, though, I contacted his management team and asked if he might be able to come and present today. So we went back and forth for weeks with the management team. And there's one day that I walked into the office. Students had left for break already, so there was nobody on campus. And our wellness center gets pretty quiet during that time. So I walk into the office, nobody's there, and there's a message on my office phone from Johan's manager saying, Johan is going to come and present at this conference. So I had to take a minute. So I stood up and I walked out of my room and I just started saying, oh my gosh, you've got this, Lauren, you've got this. Big girl pants, Lauren, you've got this. So I took a minute and I thought I was all alone, but then from across the temporary wall into our yoga studio, I heard, Deep breath, everyone, and let's send positive vibes to Lauren and her big girl Pam. It was then that I found out there was an unscheduled yoga class going on in the yoga studio, but I was sincerely appreciative for their support at that time. So let's get some housekeeping items out of the way. We are very grateful to Student Assistant Services for providing the CEU credits for today, so thank you very much to our Student Assistant Services. Please note that if you have not registered at the front desk for those CEUs, please do that. You must have signed in at registration and stay for the entire conference to receive your 6.5 credits. The evaluation forms are in each one of your purple packets, and they need to be turned in at the end of the day in order to receive your credits. If you're not receiving credits, we would still love to get your evaluation forms so that we can make next year's conference even better. Inside each one of your folders is a brochure with the schedule of today's events. Please note that Johan Hari will be available for a meet and greet to sign books during our lunch, which is being sponsored by the wonderful Liberation programs. All of our sponsor tables will be available during breaks, at lunch, and after the conference until 5 p.m. So please take a minute to visit our sponsor tables. At this time, I'd like to introduce our officer in charge, acting as Purchase College's interim president, Dennis Craig.
Thank you, Lauren. Since this is a prevention conference, I just had to go back to the back of the room and see what was being served for breakfast. So it was a great relief to see the fresh fruit that was there and all the wonderful things. So thanks again to New York Presbyterian for sponsoring breakfast. As Lauren mentioned, I'm Dennis Craig. I'm Vice President for Student Affairs and Enrollment Management and acting as officer in charge this year. On behalf of Purchase College, it's a privilege to host the second annual Under the Influence Conference, and I'm pleased that so many of you here today have come to learn about the power of prevention on college campuses and beyond. As someone who spent many years in higher education and witnessed a growing set of challenges as our demographics have shifted, it's vitally important that staff and faculty look at our students holistically. We all know student success doesn't begin or end in the classroom. What a student experiences on campus in terms of their health and well-being has a direct impact on whether they're able to stay in college, graduate, and succeed after graduation. At Purchase, our ideal is to empower students to make healthier choices for themselves by providing them with the information and the support that they need. As you all know, it's no small task. We've achieved varying levels of success. We know that the more we get the larger campus involved in prevention, the more opportunities we have to reach students before they get hurt or in trouble. The longer we delay the age of onset of use, the less likely students are to experience addiction and to experience the negative consequences of alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use. How do we strive to achieve this holistically at Purchase? Our Wellness Center offers programs that address the spectrum of wellness and health: intellectual, environmental, vocational, social, emotional, physical, financial, and spiritual, by offering yoga, meditation, mindfulness, and specific prevention programming. The Wellness Center helps students reduce stress, manage their emotions, and be aware of how things like sleep, nutrition, exercise, and substance use can impact their quality of life. I'm pleased to report that we're seeing positive results from our efforts. Due to the coordinated prevention efforts of our campus over the last 5 years, we've seen a decline in substance use for all illicit substances and tobacco. In fact, we're proud to say that the majority of our students are not using illicit substances. How did we do it? Here's just one example. Last semester, we redesigned our procedure for screening students using an electronic web-based tool that increased our screenings by more than 900%. This one change enabled us to connect that many more students needed support services. In addition to prevention, our campus is currently working towards being a leader in the area of recovery. It is our hope that this conference inspires SUNYs and regional colleges to start a collegiate recovery program of their own on their own campuses. In the coming year, we plan to provide comprehensive support services for students in recovery. This will include a dedicated recreation space and apartments that will help form a community of students in recovery, and allies that will serve as an additional support system. We'll also be looking ahead as how state marijuana legislation will change our students' perspective on the drug. While the legislation will not affect the policies on campus, we know we'll be challenged with providing additional education so that students are fully aware of the resources available to them and can make informed choices. Finally, I applaud all of my colleagues at Purchase and all of you for your dedication in serving our students and to our continued commitment to prevention and wellness. I hope you leave today inspired by the speakers and discussions, which I'm sure will be enlightening. Thank you for taking the time to be here and for these conversations. It's an important opportunity for us to learn from each other and to do better. Right now, I'm pleased to welcome Mary Ann D. Christopher, who will serve as our moderator for the Collegiate Recovery panel. But first, some background on Mary Ann. Mary Ann D. Christopher has served for over 47 years in a variety of professional capacities in the private and public sectors. Throughout her career, she has been an advocate and agent for change in complex addiction, child welfare, educational, and governmental systems. While the Office of Alcohol and Substance Abuse Services, her portfolio almost 10 years, included oversight of the Prevention Bureau. She also oversaw, among other initiatives, various federal grants and the development of the OASIS Prevention Grant Initiative, which now benefits 15 SUNY and 5 CUNY campuses. At OASIS, Mary Ann was an early champion for expanding OASIS support for recovery services. She oversaw the development of recovery centers in New York State and numerous other recovery efforts. Upon her retirement from OASIS in 2016, she was asked to consider a post-retirement part-time role, which led to a unique memorandum of understanding between OASIS and the SUNY system to develop an AOD infrastructure across its 64 campuses. Her list of accomplishments continues in the program. I invite you to read more about Ms. D. Christopher's career and about all of today's speakers, but for now I'd like to once again welcome Mary Ann D. Christopher to the panel.
For 47 years, that's a long time. So, on behalf of the SUNY system, the Chancellor, Provost, and especially Dr. Graham, who's the Associate Provost for University Life, thank you for, hosting this here today. I'm so gratified to see such a large group. I know how these planning efforts just absorb your life, and it's just endless. So thank you, Matt and Lauren, and all of you. So, with that said, I know we're on a tight schedule, and I know that I have to stay on schedule, and then I have to keep the whole group on schedule. I just want to give you a little overview about this MOU between OASIS and the SUNY system. So, I wore quite a few hats at OASIS, including prevention and recovery. So back around 2014, Governor Cuomo was strongly behind the Enough is Enough work and the whole issue about sexual violence. So being member of the executive team there, the commissioner and I said, now's the time to strike. Now's the time to advance the issues around college services. We had done a whole array of collegiate services back about 20 years ago, but over time they ebbed and flowed, funding was lost, et cetera, et cetera. So when this Enough is Enough initiative hit the stage, we said, now's the time. So she gave me the green light to work with the governor's office around doing something with colleges. I won't bore you with all the ins and outs of institutional work and all the hoops you have to jump through. Well, suffice it to say, it was interesting. And what transpired was that we were able to secure $2.5 million each year for 5 years that would go to 15 SUNY schools and 5 CUNY schools. And those grants at $125,000 each, at first I thought that's hardly anything. what are they going to use this for? It really has been quite integrated into each of the campuses, and we're thrilled with that. So as that effort got off the ground in 2016, as we got the green light to do the procurement, it was a time in my own career to step aside, and there were great staff at Oasis, and some of them are here now today. Went into raised hands. Let's do it today. Okay. And they really got their arms around that process. They really made that procurement happen. So as the MOU went forward, there were also things happening within New York State. Oasis was hosting the National Prevention Network Conference in 2016, and I hosted that, and I was able to work with the UNI system and the University of Buffalo Research Institute. And all these things just joined forces that at the end of 2016, we were able to talk about this MOU. Of course, all of you that work on campuses, anything that seems easy is slow. You have to, it takes a lot of time. So the actual effective start of the MOU was in June of 2017. So I'm there approximately 10 hours a week. We could probably use 3 full-time staff. So I really have to be focused. And focus, overarching, as you heard me say, was to develop an infrastructure. We have 64 campuses. All of you do something. Some do more, some do less. And how do we help each of you reach your potential when it comes to providing alcohol and drug services? How do we change the culture on campuses as how not only the classmates and instructors, but the administration view these issues of alcohol and drugs? There's, from the highest level of SUNY administration across the whole system, there's a hesitancy at times. Sure, I'm not telling the secrets here out of school, that if we talk about alcohol and drugs, if we talk about we have this issue, what does that mean? Does that mean we have a problem? Does that mean we're going to be seen less than? I see this as a wonderful opportunity for the SUNY system, which is the largest system in the country, to be real leaders here in these issues. If we can harness all the energy and synergy. So, with that said, the first thing we had wanted to do, as I was trying to get my arms around all of this and figure out who's who, because you all know that in 2016, 2017, there was tremendous institutional change at SUNY. The chancellor, the provost, the deputy provost, the associate provost, all of them changed. Okay, so it was really coming together and trying to educate. And one of the key roles that I play at SUNY system is to educate and to be at every table possible where I'm able to have that happen. So the first thing we wanted to do was we wanted to find out what the campuses were up to in terms of policy procedures. So we had to do a survey. So we worked with the University of Buffalo Research Institute, Dictions, and we did a survey. And again, like all things, it isn't easy. Nothing's easy. It took longer. We thought we'd have the survey out in 2017. We didn't get the survey out until 2018. It took longer to get the campuses to answer. I had to personally dog a lot of you, not each of you sitting here, but those of you that had to complete this. And I'm very proud to say that we had 98% back. Okay, that's the highest rate of return that the SUNY system has had. And it's the most comprehensive assessment of a state system ever done. So we have a wealth of information. Now, the challenge is going to be, what are we going to do with that information? How do we analyze that information? We've just done the first flush of things, and we really need to dive deep on these issues in 2019. But I just want to give you a couple highlights, and I don't know who's going to cook me, you, Lauren. Okay. We asked campuses, what's your, biggest challenges? Now, for all of you sitting here, you live and breathe these issues every day, so I'm sure there's nothing I'm going to say that's going to surprise you. Marijuana, cannabis was the number one issue. Of course, because we're in this state of flux here. Okay. Then there's the second issue was a limited control of off-campus access to alcohol and drugs. Number three was a lack of staff, a lack of resources. What I hear from all of you is, some campuses have, one FTE, and maybe that one FTE is shared with something else. So you don't even have a whole person, focusing on these issues. And then it's not just in terms of the wellness centers and prevention, it becomes an issue of, okay, you have students that have to have services. Where are you going to send them to? How are they going to get access to these services? Then we have all the issues around violent behaviors and all the, risky behaviors that go hand in glove with drinking and alcohol. And the fifth group was kind of a combination of issues. It was the issue of the culture. You still have, and even though we know that the majority of students are not abusing alcohol, are not abusing drugs, the culture is that drinking is what you do, and that you can't tell me what to do. I'm an adult, I'm over 18, we should change the laws, we should roll it back from 21 to 18. And it's not just the students, it's professors and faculty and even some administrators also. So we have to change that. And then we know that the use of these drugs and alcohol sometimes really impacts the student's entire life. That this is their life here we're talking about. They underachieve, GPA drops. They perhaps graduate, perhaps not, perhaps it takes them 5 years, so now they have to pay a 5th or 6th year of tuition. And whatever track they were on to have a successful career, a successful life, is thrown off track. Some of them will be able to change that behavior once they're through at graduation, but then there's those that have triggered a lifelong issue with drinking and alcohol. So, we also found some, common themes. It's a huge system. Not everybody thinks the same. Not everybody does the same. And we know we're in a system where the central office, one would think the central office has control over all of you. As you know, not true. Okay, so we're there to support you. Every one of you is in an institution that has your own board, your own president, your own policies, and how do we make these work? We want to support you, but I need to hear from all of you. I need to know what you need as we try to dig down into the survey. We want to do some other work around what were the answers in terms of geography, those in the suburbs, those in the cities, and I'm getting the hook here, so I have to move on. So anyway, that's the point with the survey. The issue with the survey is it's just a first step. So then we get into recovery. I also have that hat on at Oasis, and I'm so pleased that they're now moving into recovery services in the Collegiate area. And we have 4 SUNY campuses that have received smaller grants. We have 2 that have received larger grants. And Commissioner Sanchez and her staff have have really started to support not only prevention, but again, it seems like it's small investment, but you need that small investment. They planted the seeds, and it's up to you to really cultivate these things. So, I'm almost at the end, Lauren, I think. And I just want to say that I know in the governor's budget, he mentioned that he wanted to have Narcan on all the campuses. So that was something we at SUNY System had spoken about back in the fall and had a plan. And now with his support and also with the New York State Department of Health, that will provide Narcan to all registered programs, every campus will be able to have this on site. So lastly, I just want to say everything takes longer than one thinks. You think something's easy and it's hard. But I just want to encourage each of you to continue every day to do what you're doing because it's so critical. Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to invite a panel up, please. Okay, so I'm really pleased today to be able to introduce each of the panelists and to moderate this event. And I'm going to introduce each of them and then each of them separately. And then after I introduce you, you will address the audience in terms of the topics that were asked of you, and those topics, they're all going to be talking about what the collegiate recovery programs are, how they work with them, how to create them. I'm sure some of the challenges and obstacles that you've had, and what each of you would have to do to have such a program. And then when each of them is done, hopefully we'll have some time to do questions and answers. And they'll each have about 10 minutes. So, first one up to bat, Lisa Arnold, that's you, is the director of the Collegiate Recovery Program at Fairfield University, where she's employed for the last 17 years. She serves as the chair of the CRP Advisory Board, which is responsible for opening the first recovery house in Connecticut and the first Jesuit collegiate recovery program in the country. She's also a member of the Opioid Awareness Task Force at the university, which brings several events onto campus throughout the year to promote awareness and reduce stigma. Lisa has over 24 years experience working with addiction and recovery, including detox, rehab, extended care, private practice, drug court, and higher education.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I thought I would start by just going back to 2010, moving into 9 years later. We started out with a very small recovery lounge on our campus. We are a small Jesuit New England school, 4,000 and change undergrads. So what we were looking at was students who could find a safe place to go. And so we did open up our recovery lounge, started asking around, started asking students, what do you want? Our students in recovery were seeking safety, unity, trust, a sense of belonging, and feeling valued on campus. They knew that they wanted to be a part of the mainstream, but not in the same way as a traditional student. So their answer to our question, what do you need, is they really wanted the housing piece. And we were really excited to go to bat for them. Administratively, it took a while for the buy-in, and we were able to secure a house. which is directly across the street from one of the entrances of the school. So it's within walking distance of everything that the students need in terms of campus life. What's important in resiliency and recovery is a structured program and sober support for these students. So what we did was we opened up a house. It's a freestanding cape. It has 5 beds. And it's really been interesting because the numbers waver, and it's in the spirit of one day at a time. Oftentimes we admit more students than we keep, and then we get more students than we had at the beginning of the year. So as time progressed, I'm going to move up to August of 2013, we opened up the house. And in order to provide an integrated program with all of the sober support that they need and all of the components that these students needed, keeping in mind that this is not a traditional student. A traditional student looks at their academics first. Students in recovery need their recovery first. So it's a delicate balance. And how did we do that? We looked at academics because after one semester, and this is over years of troubleshooting, we looked at all of our clients that we had in-house. We had 5. When we initially opened, everybody stayed sober for the first year. And we were like, yes! And then we looked at their grades and we went, oh. So some of them were struggling academically. We decided that we had to add an academic component because that needs to be balanced with their recovery course. And we hired someone who is well-versed in recovery, and she also works in the dean's office. So she meets with them once a week through a private fund that we got through Charlie Smith, who actually lives in California, who's an alum. He dedicated and donated his time and his money to working with us to provide that academic support that these students need. They meet with our academic support person once a week. They are given resources. They structure their schedules academically. She helps them do their daily plans, and then she helps them register for the next year so that they get all the classes that they need, keeping in mind that their recovery comes first. So what does that look like? We also have a spirituality component. The spirituality component involves 12-step recovery. And the students are now attending 3 meetings a week. They all have sponsors. If they do have more than a year, sometimes they have sponsees themselves. And their classes, believe it or not, are actually scheduled around those meetings. Why? Because their home group is so important. Their step work is so important. And everything that they need to do in order to promote this experience for them and be successful in both of those areas. We also have, as part of our spirituality program, next weekend all of our students are going to Ender's Island. I don't know who here is familiar with that, in Mystic, Connecticut, and they do a nice retreat. We are incorporating something that we're really excited about in January. We're going to do an immersion trip to Jamaica. And the students are going to go down there and build a house, and we're going to partner with campus ministry. And that is also part of our spirituality component. On our campus, we do carry Narcan, and I do the Narcan trainings, and I pull in all of the recovery students because they're there to help. This is part of, in the spirit of giving back. They do a lot of service work on our campus, and we require that as part of the programming as well, because it's important for them to bridge that gap between living and learning. And when students see them on campus, particularly the ones who are struggling with their own use, they see this continuum of care, and it shifts the college culture, and the campus life changes in terms of at-risk behaviors become more minimal because they see the students on campus who are capable of doing this, those students in recovery, and they look normal. So it's pretty cool to watch. I get them out and about. Nothing is more real, I think, than seeing a student in recovery show up and speak out. Not everybody's about recovering out loud, but we are very fortunate in that we do have students who are willing to do that. So we have a house manager also. He lives in the house. He works at a local extended care facility, and at night he takes the guys to their AA meetings. He does chemical testing on site, so everybody in the house, in order to maintain that accountability. They do urinalysis every week. They get breathalyzed every week. I get the report in real time, whether it's at 1 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning, especially when they get back from somewhere. If they go home for the weekend, the expectation is that they will get drug tested. And they ask for that too. They really want to stay accountable, and it's important to them, and it's important to the families as well. Okay. So
And you'll all have an opportunity to ask them your questions afterwards. Jonathan? Okay, Jonathan Beasley is the alcohol and other drug interventionist at the University of Connecticut. He has served in this role since 2009. He's a licensed alcohol and drug counselor as well as a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Connecticut. Has been in the field of behavioral health since 1979. He's earned his BA in psychology at Penn State and completed his master's degree at Northern Connecticut State University. Throughout his career, he served in numerous clinical and supervisory roles across the spectrum of mental health and substance abuse organizations. He's a frequent presenter and educator on subjects associated with substance abuse and other mental health issues. Presently serves as the chairperson of the Clinical Advisory Board at Tricircle Inc. in Wallingford, Connecticut. And he is the co-author of the 2018 book, Cannabis on Campus, Changing the Dialogue in the Wake of Legalization. He also has a private practice.
Thank you very much. Is my time up now? I'm sorry. Good morning, everyone. So in thinking about this, I am the alcohol and other drug interventionist at the University of Connecticut. So my role is clinical, and what I really kind of bring to the conversation is just over the years having thousands and thousands of conversations with people, many of them young adults, about substance use. So much of what I know has been taught to me by my clients, and I get to understand some of the more intimate aspects of substance use and all the whys. So University of Connecticut, for those who've never been there, is a state university of 24,000. It's located in a pretty rural area. In fact, if you're anywhere near Yukon and you're not going to Yukon, you're lost. And so because of that, because it was so, especially in its history, so located in such a rural area, a great culture of substance misuse grew out of that. Because there's little else to do at UConn. In fact, some of you may remember that our spring weekends a while back were nationally notorious. People would come from other colleges out of state just to go and witness the mayhem. Now that's since been squashed, but even to this day, you can see on this campus, starting on the weekends, and weekends start on Thursday at UConn, the students gathering, like herds of wildebeest getting ready to migrate towards the party and you know, move en masse to find, you know, the bar that's open or has nickel night. And this is the kind of culture that is so abstinence hostile for those students trying to get sober or trying to maintain sobriety on this college campus. And so those students in recovery already would live off campus and have to, you know, come in, do their classes like some sort of commando raid, and then get out real quick before they were lured by all the enticing aspects of the party culture going on in campus. The Yukon Recovery Community, the URC, was started in 2013. However, it is the brainchild of my friend and colleague, Ann Thompson-Helder, who I met in 2009, and immediately began telling me about collegiate recovery. Now, I'd been in the business for 30 years, and I had never heard of CRPs. It was unknown. And if you go back just 10 years, it was a relatively new phenomenon. I guess Lisa Laitman here at Rutgers was one of a handful of programs that were open nationally, and now we've seen them grow. What's that? 1982, yeah. And so those were the models that we had. So in 2013, I finally got it and began to work with Ann to create this community. We were helped early on by having a nucleus of some students already in recovery who, through the grapevine, we knew were in the rooms in the surrounding AA meetings, and got them to come on and come on board with this new venture. Early on, we met with them and together decided what kind of program we were going to have. It started very organically. What we develop a mission statement. What does being in the program mean? What does it, being a member mean? What is membership? Other levels of membership? Are we going to be a 12-step program? And trying to sort these things out. But in doing so, I think we also empowered our early members. I now refer to as the founding mothers and fathers of the USC, and we still keep in touch with them. At this point, we began to develop, we got a grant, Stacy Matheson grant, got some seeding money, had a designated space to meet, began to do some programming. At first, it was just a lot of social stuff. Again, then to have other programs coming in, speakers from throughout the university, and provide services needed for this particular population. Now, this is where in the story some magic happens. And it's always cool, because I think when we empower our students, they can create some of the magic. And the story goes like this, I think 2 years after we started it, one of our more intrepid members decided to do something. Our university president, which was having, she would do that maybe twice a year, office hours, and people throughout the university come and speak with her, meet with her about issues that were important to them. And he went there and sat, and he thought he was going to be in a circle or maybe in a room like this full of people, and she would speak to them. But in fact, he found himself in this very crowded waiting room, very, very crowded, of people waiting to see her, and they were being dragged in one by one and meeting with her. And after one came out, one young lady who came out just before him, within 5 minutes, sobbing, tears running down her face, he took out his phone and he started texting one of the other members who was working on his PhD in community organization, and texted something to the effect of, "Help me, please." And he came right over and on the back of a napkin or something and presented to the president. And within a little over a year, we actually got a house, because apparently she said, "You're the first person who came here and they were prepared and knew what they wanted." And from there, we have a designated house now. We have the ability to have people stay there. It's a beautiful place. We're now at the place where the challenge is to take our program to the next level, along the lines of something like Rutgers, like Fairfield University, getting people to stay there, crystallizing our programming. The other challenges, and part of that as a state university, is working with like admissions, for instance. How do you get people in recovery and get them in? Because sometimes that's a little tricky. Their resumes have taken a ding over time. And then, get to that next level so where students want to come to UConn, not just because of UConn, but because of the recovery services that we provide, rather than just recruiting from in-house. Am I over? You're on.
So I'm pleased to introduce Lisa Lakeman. Actually, she was the first one we traveled to down Rutgers in December 2017. I was not that familiar with collegiate recovery at all, so Dr. Graham and I went down, and she gave us everything that, I don't know how many hours we were actually there, but quite some time. It was quite a, tour, and since then I've traveled to Ohio State University, see what they do. I traveled to Augsburg, and I traveled to Michigan also. So, Lisa Lakeman is the director of the Alcohol and Other Drug Assistance Program within Rutgers Student Health and CAPS. She's nationally recognized for her work in developing assessment and intervention services for students at risk for alcohol and other drug problems, and for creating an on-campus recovery support community that includes the Recovery House. The Recovery House, in existence since 1988, is an on-campus residence hall for students in recovery from addictions and is the first of its kind on a college campus in the United States. She's also a senior researcher with the Rutgers Center for Alcohol Studies, serves on the University Alcohol Policy Committee and the CAPS Leadership Group, and has numerous publications. She has a 30-year career in the field. Please stand.
So it's an interesting place to be here. I am a person who likes to reflect on history. I have a deep appreciation for what people before me have done. And I really appreciate being here with my colleagues who have newer programs. But one of the things I remember is, as I look out over this sea of people, is that Rutgers hired me in 1983, and my job title was alcohol counselor. And one of the reasons for that is they barely realized there was an alcohol problem on campus, and they didn't think there were any drugs around. So, and the other thing about my job is that I was the only alcohol counselor for 50,000 students on 3 campuses. So for those of you who know Rutgers, Rutgers has a New Brunswick campus, a Newark campus, and a Camden campus. Camden is about 65 miles from New Brunswick, and Newark is about 25. And so I traveled to all those campuses on a weekly basis to develop alcohol and drug counseling services and the recovery service for about a year and a half before I was able to hire somebody to help me. And that was quite a challenge. My previous life had been in the treatment world, where I definitely did not work alone. and I had a lot of support. And people were clueful about addiction. At a university, that isn't the case. And we continue to come up against that in many ways. And stigma is actually only one of the problems. So I have a lot of hats, and I think it keeps my job interesting, but it also presents a lot of challenges. And I think one of the challenges in our work today is really being able to do all of what we need to do. And I know a lot of people out there know what I'm talking about, because a lot of you who have many hats and are trying to, save the world also. But what I've done at Rutgers has really been driven in large part by what I hear from students. And so right from the very beginning, I had 4 students who were in recovery, and I started a recovery support group. And as Jonathan mentioned, our weekend also starts on Thursday, and so I had a recovery support group that met on Thursday night, because one thing you know about people in recovery is that they need to have fun and they need to have community, and we need to have a parallel universe, right, for students in recovery on a college campus. So what would happen is people would come to the recovery group, and then they'd go hang out after the group. And that was the beginning of what we now call a collegiate recovery community. We didn't have this language in the 80s. And for those of you who don't remember, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. And we had to go look in the library and the phone book for everything. And I have to remember that, because it was lonely when you had to rely on that. And I thought there were all these people out there doing what I did, and there really weren't. So fast forward to about the year 2000, we started our recovery house. We had a lot of support from the university after we sold them on the idea. One of the resistances, by the way, was we called it the substance-free living environment. I don't know why we came up with that title, but the university residence life system said, well, all of our residence halls are supposed to be substance-free. There are politics at every university and every place, so we ended up evolving into calling it the Recovery House, because that's actually what our students prefer. or they also call it the sober house. So, but we've increased our community. We've also increased our awareness of what we need to sustain a collegiate recovery program. We first of all need enough support and enough staff. At one time, there were 2 of us doing all of the AOD counseling and the recovery work for 48 students. That was beyond our ability to manage, and we quickly found that out. And so we scaled back, we added staff, and now we're up to 40. We actually got a grant from New Jersey, and we have been able to hire another recovery counselor. I have 2 full-time recovery counselors who are working only in the recovery support community and the recovery house. The rest of us work in the counseling center, seeing students who have substance use disorders, and we work as a team. We are working toward a truly integrated health and counseling system. We do screening in our counseling center for every student who comes in. We have an electronic health record that is a combined record with health services and counseling services. So we are taking all the steps that we can. I just want to say one more thing about where we are today. We are really committed to inclusion and diversity. Most of our collegiate recovery programs are very white, and we have been talking about this at a national level for many years, and the last few years we have at Rutgers been very committed to having a more inclusive and diverse community. We have one of the most diverse campuses in the country, so this shouldn't be hard. And we've made a lot of strides. We have we have racial, ethnic, gender diversity in the recovery house, and it's really improved our community to a very large extent. Our students do a lot of service work, outreach to the community, and I think this is where the future of collegiate recovery is.
Just before I introduce Nicholas, I just want to add that in the survey that we did last year, 50% of the SUNY campuses say they are doing something in terms of recovery. It's what that, something is that changes, and it's all over the line. So I think that this kind of event can help inform that also. So I'm pleased to introduce Nicholas Sperry. He's the Assistant Director of Recovery Support Programs. In his role, he oversees initiatives that support students who identify as in recovery from substance dependence, students pursuing sobriety, non-drinkers, and those negatively affected by substance abuse within their families. He also serves as a live-in clinician and program manager for recovery housing at Boston College. He grew up in Tonopah, is that correct? Nevada, and graduated from Boston College with an undergraduate degree in clinical psychology and a graduate degree in mental health counseling. He's a licensed therapist in Massachusetts and works as a clinician at addiction treatment centers in the Boston area.
Thank you so much, and good morning. I just have to kind of start by saying this is pretty much my literal nightmare to be following you. So welcome everyone to this. I can't overemphasize how so much of all of our programs have really kind of begged and borrowed from certain elements that you guys have tried in the field. So once again, I'm terrified to be here. But no, so I'll start by talking a little bit about Boston College and kind of what makes our program and us a little bit more unique. So BC is a private Jesuit Catholic institution, about 9,000 students. BC is very residential, so I always throw that out by kind of talking about there's a strong gravity to live on campus at Boston College. Our freshmen, sophomore, and seniors, basically 95% of them live on campus. Half the junior class is abroad, and the other half live on campus. So we're in the high 80s in terms of our 4-year on-campus presence. And so when we started our Collegiate Recovery Program, having housing was kind of like our first goal. So a lot of programs have kind of had student groups that have emerged, and then eventually we're able to get housing. We kind of did it the other way around, and admittedly we're struggling now with getting the student group to be larger, so I can talk about that. But in spring of 2013, so we've always been kind of chasing Fairfield, spring semester, we had 4 students, which I think is a reoccurring theme, that were on campus. They had all kind of had a similar story in that they had come back from a leave. They'd taken a leave to kind of go to treatment, had obtained sobriety, and were all back. And their kind of call was, hey, we're on campus. I loved your term, abstinence hostel here. It's probably the worst place I could imagine to be, to try to stay sober. What can you do for us? And so, working with those students, BC was able to kind of start moving the pieces on getting them at least housing. So we were able to kind of grab some space from one of our healthy living floors, which I think people have talked about. A lot of universities have kind of substance-free floors, eyeing the idea that all the floors should be substance-free, but this is the one that we're really going to enforce that in. So we were able to grab some space from that floor, house our students. I originally came in as a live-in clinician, and I lived next to the students in an apartment. That's no longer the case because we were able to obtain a house in 2016. So we now have a standalone house that can house up to 8, and we tend to average around 5 to 6 undergrad students. And we have a live-in graduate house manager who's normally from a social work program or a counseling program, kind of lives in the house, is able to kind of be there and use their counseling skills in a supportive way, but also just be a really good roommate who happens to be in recovery most of the time. And I think I appreciate everyone, it's kind of the advantage of going last. So many of the things we have in the house are really kind of identical to what you guys have talked about, so I'll just kind of skim through them. But standard things such as drug testing regularly, there's requirements that students kind of all go to an AA meeting together as a house at least once a week, and then on their own they're able to kind of choose 1 or 2 other AA meetings in the area, or NA, or MA, or other type of 12-step programs. Certainly our larger community of collegiate recovery on campus is very open to different pathways to recovery. Our house has really been kind of identified as a 12-step house, and that's kind of what the university has kind of asked us to create. And I think the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about, and actually realized I should have made this joke in the beginning, was BC is a very unique place to stay sober in because of its academic reality. And so, a few years ago, Boston College did kind of an internal survey and wanted to find out basically the drinking patterns and the academic patterns of its students. And one of the things they found was that, as opposed to the national kind of trend where the more a student identifies as being a drinker, so the more they drink, the lower their GPA tends to be, that was actually inverted at Boston College. Our 3.8 GPA students tended to be our highest drinkers. The data has kind of replicated that. So why am I bringing that up? At BC, we've really kind of struggled to kind of, how do I phrase this, bring the students back and then allow them to flourish. And kind of like what Lisa was talking about, academics is such a huge challenge for our students because they feel also out on that loop when they're kind of coming back, and the people around them are getting these amazing internships and then going to work on Wall Street immediately. And so there's the attention to these students is so important just because they have so much stacked against them already as they're kind of rolling back in. I realize I'm probably getting close to it. So thank you so much.
And each of you. I think this is now a great opportunity, and I want to open it up to questions, and you can address them to the group, you can address them to individuals, and I'll play the whole one for you. Yes, sir. Sir.
I probably don't need the mic, but I want to thank all of you. I actually have 2 questions. Number one, in the late 1980s, my oldest son went to college. He went to Hartwick College in Oneonta, New York, and there he went to a sober house, and that was not, he didn't have a problem, and he didn't drink or anything like that, but he didn't want to be like me. That's really why he wanted to go there. He didn't want to be around people like myself. And he was very disenchanted when he went there, because in there the kids were drinking. Nicholas, you were the only one who mentioned random drug testing. I don't know if the rest of you knew that or not. But he wanted to get out of there, because either the kids had alcohol in their rooms, or they were going to parties with the other kids where they were doing drinking or smoking marijuana. That was the first question. And the second question has to do with integrating those kids into the rest of the community of the university and not keeping them isolated. And how do you go about doing that? I know you want to keep them away from the wild parties, but you don't want to isolate them from all the rest of the things that are going on.
Those are really good questions. So I didn't mention drug testing because we don't do drug testing. Actually, the reality is in our recovery house, we have students who have 5 years of sobriety. And we don't have a house that's built on, and I think some of this has been my long experience. I'm not at all criticizing people who do drug testing, because there's a lot of pressure, by the way, from a lot of places to do drug testing. And so I just want to say that we've evolved because of our community, and our community didn't want to be drug tested. They wanted to, as a community, have people be accountable to each other. And quite honestly, I don't live there, and none of my staff live there. We have 2 RAs who are in recovery who do live there, but nobody can catch somebody all the time. So our community has really worked much harder on accountability to each other. And so we have very few relapses. We've had many semesters where we've had no relapses. And we have many students over 30 years. So I think it's a good model. It's not a perfect model, but I don't think it was anything like what your son experienced. And the other question, I forgot what your other question was.
It was integrating.
Integrating. So our students live on campus, and the idea is really that if you have a safe place to live, where you get support for your recovery, that you can expand your horizons. I believe that is really what recovery is. And so our students join clubs, they do club sports, they join academic clubs, they learn how to navigate a world where there is alcohol, because when you go get a job, you have to navigate, happy hours and meetings and parties where there is alcohol. And I think this is just another part of that, learning how to live in a world part. And so our students are encouraged to study abroad, by the way, and do a lot of things that other students do. But again, everybody talks about having that core support and that safe place to come home to. That's really important.
Hi, I have 2 questions. Only one of you mentioned the role of a private benefactor at Fairfield U in giving money to be involved in your program. So my question is, has that happened anywhere else, or have you seen that at other schools? And my second question is related to career services. Nicholas had mentioned watching other students get internships. Do any of you work with your career services specifically on helping your recovery kids in getting jobs? And also, are they reaching out to employers that may be interested in kids like that?
So one thing that I didn't mention was that every week we have group therapy, and I've modeled it after Texas Tech in the sense that we have seminars and we build upon their skills